Okay, today is 11th of August, 2010. Now we come to Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 56, Pali Sutta. This sutta is a bit interesting. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Nalanda in Pavarika's mango grove. Now on that occasion, the Niganta Nataputta was staying at Nalanda with a large assembly of Nigantas. Then when the Niganta named Diga Tapasi had wandered for alms in Nalanda and had returned from his alms round, after his meal he went to Pavarika's mango grove to see the Blessed One. He exchanged greetings with the Blessed One, and when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood at one side. As he stood there, the Blessed One said to him, "There are seats, Tapasi. Sit down if you like." Stop here for a moment. So, this was one of the rare occasions when the Buddha and his monks was at a certain place, and this Niganta Nataputta and his wanderers was also at the same place in Nalanda, or the outskirts of Nalanda. Then this Niganta by the name of Diga Tapasi. And Diga means tall or long, and Tapasi means ascetic. From the word tapas, asceticism. So he came to see the Buddha, and the Buddha invited him to sit down. When this was said, Diga Tapasi took a low seat and sat down at one side. Then the Blessed One asked him, "Tapasi, how many kinds of action does the Niganta Nataputta describe for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action?" This action here, the Pali word is kamma. And he said, "Friend Gotama, the Niganta Nataputta is not accustomed to use the description action. The Niganta Nataputta is accustomed to use the description rod. The Pali is danda. Then Tapasi, how many kinds of rod does the Niganta Nataputta describe for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action?" Friend Gotama, the Niganta Nataputta describes 3 kinds of rod for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action. That is, the bodily rod, the verbal rod, and the mental rod. How then, Tapasi, is the bodily rod one, the verbal rod another, and the mental rod still another? The bodily rod is one, friend Gotama, the verbal rod is another, and the mental rod is still another. Of these 3 kinds of rod, Tapasi, thus analyzed and distinguished, which kind of rod does the Niganta Nataputta describe as the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, the bodily rod or the verbal rod or the mental rod? Of these 3 kinds of rod, friend Gotama, thus analyzed and distinguished, the Niganta Nataputta describes the bodily rod as the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. Do you say bodily rod, Tapasi? I say the bodily rod, friend Gotama. Do you say the bodily rod, Tapasi? I say the bodily rod, friend Gotama. Do you say the bodily rod, Tapasi? I say the bodily rod, friend Gotama. Thus the Blessed One made the Niganta Diga Tapasi maintain his statement up to the 3rd time. Stop here for a moment. So here these 2 schools, the Buddha describes action in terms of kamma, and the Nigantas, basically they are talking about the same thing, but they call it danda, rod. So here, when the Buddha asked him which one is the most serious, the most reprehensible, he said the bodily rod, which is quite different from what the Buddha's teaching is. So the Buddha made him repeat it 3 times, and he maintained it even up to the 3rd time. Then the Niganta Diga Tapasi asked the Blessed One, And you, friend Gotama, how many kinds of rod do you describe for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action? Tapasi, the Tathagata is not accustomed to use the description rod. The Tathagata is accustomed to use the description action. But friend Gotama, how many kinds of action do you describe for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action? Tapasi, I describe 3 kinds of action for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, that is, bodily action, verbal action, and mental action. How then, friend Gotama, is bodily action one, verbal action another, and mental action still another? Bodily action is one, tapasi, verbal action is another, and mental action is still another. Of these 3 kinds of action, friend Gotama, thus analyze and distinguish, which kind of action do you describe as the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, bodily action or verbal action or mental action? Of these 3 kinds of action, tapasi, thus analyzed and distinguished, I describe mental action as the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much bodily action and verbal action. Do you say mental action, friend Gotama? I say mental action, tapasi. Do you say mental action, friend Gotama? I say mental action, tapasi. Do you say mental action, friend Gotama? I say mental action, tapasi. Thus the Niganta Diga Tapasi made the Blessed One maintain his statement up to the 3rd time, after which he rose from his seat and went to the Niganta Nataputta. I'll stop here for a moment. So you see, when they argue each other, they want to make sure that the other party affirms the statement a few times. But then this Digatapasi, he left the matter at that. He didn't argue further with the Buddha. Maybe he thought he was not up to the, he was not able to argue well enough with the Buddha, so he left. Now on that occasion, the Niganta Nataputta was seated together with a very large assembly of laymen from Balaka, most prominent among them being Upali. The Niganta Nataputta saw the Niganta Digatapasi coming in the distance and asked him, "Now where are you coming from in the middle of the day, Tapasi?" "I am coming from the presence of the recluse Gotama, Venerable Sir." "Did you have some conversation with the recluse Gotama, Tapasi?" "I had some conversation with the recluse Gotama, Venerable Sir." What was your conversation with him like, Tapasi?" Then the Niganta Digatapasi related to the Niganta Nataputta his entire conversation with the Blessed One. Stop here for a moment. So you see this Niganta Nataputta being one of the 6 famous ascetic leaders during the Buddha's time, was often surrounded by a large group of lay followers. And then among all his lay followers in that place, the most prominent, probably the most wealthy, was Upali. When this was said, the Niganta Nataputta told him, Good, Tapasi, the Niganta Diga Tapasi has answered the recluse Gotama like a well-taught disciple who understands his teacher's dispensation rightly. What does the trivial mental rod count for in comparison with the gross bodily rod? On the contrary, the bodily rod is the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. When this was said, the householder Upali said to the Niganta Nataputta, Good, Venerable Sir, on the part of Diga Tapasi. The Venerable Tapasi has answered the recluse Gotama like a well-taught disciple who understands his teacher's dispensation rightly. What does the trivial mental rod count for in comparison with the gross bodily rod? On the contrary, the bodily rod is the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. Now, Venerable Sir, I shall go and refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine on the basis of this statement. If the recluse Gotama maintains before me what the Venerable Diga Tapasi made him maintain, then just as a strong man might seize a long-haired ram by the hair, and drag him to and drag him fro and drag him round about, So in debate, I will drag the recluse Gotama to and drag him fro and drag him round about. Just as a strong brewer's workman might throw a big brewer's sieve into a deep water tank, and taking it by the corners might drag it to and drag it fro and drag it round about. So in debate, I will drag the recluse Gotama to and drag him fro and drag him round about. Just as a strong brewer's mixer might take a strainer by the corners and shake it down and shake it up and thump it about. So in debate, I will shake the recluse Gotama down and shake him up and thump him about. And just as a 60-year-old elephant might plunge into a deep pond and enjoy playing the game of ham washing, so I shall enjoy playing the game of ham washing with the recluse Gotama. Venerable Sir, I shall go and refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine on the basis of this statement. And Niganta Nataputta said, Go, householder, and refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine on the basis of this statement. For either I shall refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine, or else the Niganta Diga Tapasi, or you yourself. When this was said, the Niganta Diga Tapasi said to the Niganta Nataputta, Venerable Sir, I do not think that the householder Upali should try to refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine. For the recluse Gotama is a magician and knows a converting magic by which he converts disciples of other sectarians. And Niganta Nataputta said, It is impossible, Tapasi, it cannot happen that the householder Upali should go over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. But it is possible, it can happen that the recluse Gotama might come over to discipleship under the householder Upali. Go, householder, and refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine, for either I should refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine, or else the Niganta Diga Tapasi, or you yourself. For the second time, for the third time, the Niganta Diga Tapasi said to the Niganta Nataputta, Venerable Sir, I do not think that the householder Upali should try to refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine. For the recluse Gotama is a magician and knows a converting magic by which he converts disciples of other sectarians. It is impossible, Tapasi, it cannot happen that the householder Upali should go over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. But it is possible, it can happen that the recluse Gotama might come over to discipleship under the householder Upali. Go, householder, and refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine. For either I should refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine, or else the Niganta Diga Tapasi, or you yourself. Yes, Venerable Sir, the householder Upali replied. And he rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Niganta Nataputta, keeping him on his right, he left to go to the Blessed One at Pavarika's mango grove. Stop here for a moment. So you see this Niganta Nataputta, he allowed this lay disciple to go and argue with the Buddha. And in other places, I think he has also allowed another one of his disciples to go and argue with the Buddha. But he himself dare not go and argue with the Buddha. He should go personally, but he left it to his disciples. There, after paying homage to the Blessed One, he sat down at one side and asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, did the Niganta Diga Tapasi come here? The Niganta Diga Tapasi came here, householder. Venerable Sir, did you have some conversation with him? I had some conversation with him, householder. What was your conversation with him like, Venerable Sir? Then the Blessed One related to the householder Upali his entire conversation with the Niganta Diga Tapasi. When this was said, the householder Upali said to the Blessed One, Good, Venerable Sir, on the part of Tapasi, the Niganta Diga Tapasi has answered the Blessed One like a well-taught disciple who understands his teacher's dispensation rightly. What does the trivial mental rod count for in comparison with the gross bodily rod? On the contrary, the bodily rod is the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. And the Buddha said, Householder, if you will debate on the basis of truth, we might have some conversation about this. And he said, I will debate on the basis of truth, Venerable Sir. So let us have some conversation about this. So both of them agreed to argue. What do you think, householder? Here some Niganta might be afflicted, suffering, and gravely ill. with an illness needing treatment by cold water, which his vows prohibit, and he might refuse cold water, though mentally longing for it, and use only the permissible hot water, thus keeping his vows bodily and verbally. Because he does not get cold water, he might die. The householder, where would the Niganta Nataputta describe his rebirth as taking place? Venerable Sir, there are gods called mind-bound. He would be reborn there. Why is that? Because when he died, he was still bound by attachment in the mind. And the Buddha said, householder, householder, pay attention how you reply. What you said before does not agree with what you said afterwards, nor does what you said afterwards agree with what you said before. Yet you made this statement, I will debate on the basis of truth, Venerable Sir. So let us have some conversation about this. And he said, Venerable Sir, although the Blessed One has spoken thus, yet the bodily rod is the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha starts the argument by quoting that this some Niganta might be sick, but they have these ascetics, they have certain rules, certain vows, and one of their vows is they cannot use cold water and only have to use hot water. I don't know why. And so because he needs cold water and yet longing for cold water and he cannot get the cold water and he dies with that longing for that cold water. So this Upali agreed that because he was attached, he would be reborn in a place where the gods are called mind-bound. So the Buddha said that what you said is not consistent. Earlier you said that the bodily rod is more important, or bodily action is more important than mental action. But here, his rebirth is not dependent on his bodily action, but dependent on his mental action because of that attachment in his mind. His place of rebirth was determined by that mental action, that mental attachment. So the Buddha is showing him that the mental attachment is more important. It is the one that determines his rebirth, not the bodily action. Then the Buddha continued. What do you think, householder? Here some Niganta might be restrained with 4 checks, curbed by all curbs, clamped by all curbs, cleansed by all curbs, and claimed by all curbs. And yet when going forward and returning, he brings about the destruction of many small living beings. What result does the Niganta Nataputta describe for him? Venerable Sir, the Niganta Nataputta does not describe what is not willed as greatly reprehensible. But if one wills it, householder, then it is greatly reprehensible, Venerable Sir. But under which of the 3 rods does the Niganta Nataputta describe willing or volition, householder? Under the mental rod, Venerable Sir. And the Buddha said, householder, householder, pay attention how you reply. What you said before does not agree with what you said afterwards, nor does what you said afterwards agree with what you said before. Yet you made this statement, I will debate on the basis of truth, Venerable Sir. So let us have some conversation about this. Venerable Sir, although the Blessed One has spoken thus, yet the bodily rod is the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. Stop here for a moment. So here, you can see from these arguments the Buddha put forward that the Buddha knows that these wanderers, all their rules, all their practices very well. That's how he can argue with them. So here the Buddha says that if one of them, one of the Nigantas, he has a lot of checks, a lot of rules. He's restrained by a lot of rules. And yet, when walking around, he steps on many insects and ants and all that and kill them. So is it, what does the Niganta Nataputta say about it? Then this Upali said, because it is not intentional killing, then it is not greatly reprehensible. But if it is intentional killing, then it is greatly reprehensible. So the Buddha said, just now you said the mental action not so important, but now you say the mental action is greatly reprehensible. So he knows he's wrong, but he's very stubborn. He wants to maintain that his teacher is correct. So he still says the bodily rod is still the most reprehensible. And the Buddha is going to quote him the third example. What do you think, householder? In this town of Nalanda, successful and prosperous, is it populous and crowded with people? Yes, Venerable Sir, it is. What do you think, householder? Suppose a man came here brandishing a sword and spoke thus: in one moment, in one instant, I will make all the living beings in this town of Nalanda into one mass of flesh, into one heap of flesh. What do you think, householder? Would that man be able to do it? Venerable Sir, 10, 20, 30, 40, or even 50 men would not be able to make all the living beings in this town of Nalanda into one mass of flesh, into one heap of flesh, in one moment or instant. So what does a single trivial man count for? What do you think, householder? Suppose some recluse or Brahmin came here possessed of supernormal power, that means psychic power, and attained to mastery of mind, and he spoke thus: I will reduce this town of Nalanda to ashes with one mental act of hate. What do you think, householder? Would such a recluse or Brahmin be able to do that? Venerable Sir, such a recluse or Brahmin possessed of supernormal or psychic power and attained to mastery of mind would be able to reduce 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 Nalandas to ashes with one mental act of hate. So what does a single trivial Nalanda count for? Householder, pay attention how you reply. What you said before does not agree with what you said afterwards, nor does what you said afterwards agree with what you said before. Yet you made this statement: I will debate on the basis of truth. So let us have some conversation about this. Venerable Sir, although the Blessed One has spoken thus, yet the bodily rod is the most reprehensible for the performance of evil action, for the perpetration of evil action, and not so much the verbal rod and the mental rod. Stop here. So here, the third example, the Buddha said that suppose a man came and using a sword, in 1 second, he wants to kill all the people in Nalanda. Is it possible? Pali says it's not possible. Even if the 50 men brandishing the swords would not be able in 1 second to kill all the people in Nalanda. But he agreed that if a person had psychic power, some yogi, some ascetic with psychic power, he would be able to reduce all the whole town of Nalanda with all the people to ashes in 1 second. And not just one Nalanda, even 50 Nalandas with one mental act of hatred, he can completely wipe out, burn, kill 50 Nalandas amount of people. So even then, he was still stubborn. He still maintained that the bodily rod is the most reprehensible. What do you think, householder? Have you heard how the Dandaka, Kalinga, Meja, and Matanga forests became forests? Yes, Venerable Sir. As you heard it, how did they become forests? Venerable Sir, I heard that they became forests by means of a mental act of hate on the part of seers. Householder, pay attention how you reply. What you said before does not agree with what you said afterwards, nor does what you said afterwards agree with what you said before. Yet you made this statement: I will debate on the basis of truth, Venerable Sir. So let us have some conversation about this. And he said, Venerable Sir, I was satisfied and pleased by the Venerable One's very first simile. Nevertheless, I thought I would oppose the Blessed One thus, since I desired to hear the Blessed One's varied solutions to the problem. Magnificent, Venerable Sir, magnificent, Venerable Sir. The Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. Venerable Sir, I go to the Blessed One for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. Let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. So in this fourth example, the Buddha asked him about these four forests, Dandaka, Kalinga Major and Matanga forests. How did they become forests? Then he said, he heard that these places were formerly towns or cities, and they were completely burned up by seers, by rishis, ascetics who had psychic power. So the Buddha quoted these to confirm that these things are possible, that by one mental act of hatred can kill so many people, completely burn out the town. So after this fourth example, then only he considered that the Buddha was right. But he revealed that actually from the first argument, he already saw that the Buddha was right. But he purposely opposed the Buddha just to hear what the Buddha had to say, to give some more examples, because he was interested to see how the Buddha argued. And the Buddha said, investigate thoroughly, householder. It is good. So here finally, he asked to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and to be a lay follower of the Buddha. And the Buddha said, investigate thoroughly, householder. It is good for such well-known people like you to investigate thoroughly. And he said, Venerable Sir, I am even more satisfied and pleased with the Blessed One for telling me that. For the other sectarians, on acquiring me as their disciple, would carry a banner all over Nalanda announcing, the householder Upali has come to discipleship under us. But on the contrary, the Blessed One tells me, investigate thoroughly, householder. It is good for such well-known people like you to investigate thoroughly. So for the second time, Venerable Sir, I go to the Blessed One for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. Let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. So stop here for a moment. So here, he's even more satisfied now with the Buddha when the Buddha tells him that don't be in a hurry to become my disciple. You investigate my teachings more. So for a second time he took refuge. And the Buddha said, householder, your family has long supported the Nigantas, and you should consider that alms should be given to them when they come. And he said, Venerable Sir, I am even more satisfied and pleased with the Blessed One for telling me that. Venerable Sir, I have heard that the recluse Gotama says thus, gifts should be given only to me, gifts should not be given to others, gifts should be given only to my disciples, gifts should not be given to others' disciples. Only what is given to me is very fruitful, not what is given to others. Only what is given to my disciples is very fruitful, not what is given to others' disciples. On the contrary, the Blessed One encourages me to give gifts to the Nigantas. Anyway, we shall know the time for that, Venerable Sir. So for the third time, Venerable Sir, I go to the Blessed One for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. Let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha having psychic power, probably Buddha knew that they have people, these Nigantas and other external sectarians have been spreading lies about the Buddha and his disciples, saying that the Buddha is telling people to give gifts only to him and his disciples, not to others. So now the Buddha is contradicting those lies by telling him to continue to support his old teacher and the disciples, the Nigantas. So he is even more pleased to hear that. So for the third time he took refuge. Then the Blessed One gave the householder Upali progressive instruction, that is, talk on giving, talk on virtue or moral conduct, talk on the heavens. He explained the danger, degradation and defilement in sensual pleasures and the blessing of renunciation. When he knew that the householder Upali's mind was ready, receptive, free from hindrances, elated and confident, he expounded to him the special teaching, the teaching special to the Buddhas, suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. Just as a clean cloth with all marks removed would take dye evenly, So too, while the householder Upali sat there, the spotless, immaculate vision of the Dhamma arose in him. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. Then the householder Upali saw the Dhamma, attained the Dhamma, understood the Dhamma, fathomed the Dhamma. He crossed beyond doubt, did away with perplexity, gained intrepidity, and became independent of others in the teacher's dispensation. Then he said to the Blessed One, "Now, Venerable Sir, we must go. We are busy and have much to do." And the Buddha said, "Now is the time, householder, to do as you think fit." I stop here for a moment. So here, when the Buddha talks to a newcomer, he generally gives a graduated discourse. He starts with dana, charity, and then moral conduct, sila. Then the third one is that the result of practicing these two, charity and moral conduct, one goes to the heavens. But then even in the heavens, there is this danger, degradation and defilement in sensual pleasures, the vanity of sensual pleasures. And understanding that, the blessing of renunciation, how when one sees that sensual pleasures are not really satisfying, then one practices renunciation. And after that, the Four Noble Truths. Then he understood the Dhamma. You see, the basic Dhamma is that one understands impermanence. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. Everything in the world being impermanent, there's nothing you can worth holding on to. Anything in the world you hold on to, it will change and suffering will arise as the result. So Upali understood and became independent of others in the teacher's dispensation. This is a characteristic of an Arya. Once a person understands the Buddha's Dhamma, then he becomes independent of others in the teacher's dispensation. Then the householder Upali, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he left to return to his own house. There he addressed the doorkeeper thus: "Good doorkeeper, from today on I close my door to the Nigantas and the Nigantis, and I open my door to the Blessed One's monks, nuns, men lay followers, and women lay followers. If any Niganta comes, tell him thus: Wait, Venerable Sir, do not enter. From today on, the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. He has closed his door to the Nigantas and the Nigantis, and he has opened it to the Blessed One's monks, nuns, laymen, followers, and women lay followers. Venerable Sir, if you need alms, wait here. They will bring it to you here." "Yes, Venerable Sir," the doorkeeper replied. Stop here for a moment. So here he's telling his worker, the doorkeeper, that to open the door only for the Buddha's disciples, not for the Nigantas. The Niganta Diga Tapasi heard, "The householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama." Then he went to the Niganta Nataputta and told him, "Venerable Sir, I have heard thus. The householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama." And Nataputta said, "It is impossible, Tapasi. It cannot happen that the householder Upali should go over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. But it is possible, it can happen, that the recluse Gotama might come over to discipleship under the householder Upali." A second time and the third time, the Niganta Diga Tapasi told the Niganta Nataputta, "Venerable Sir, I have heard thus, the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama." And the third time, this Niganta Nataputta said, "It is impossible," etc. And then Diga Tapasi said, "Venerable Sir, shall I go and find out whether or not the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama?" And his teacher said, "Go, Tapasi, and find out whether or not he has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama." Then the Niganta Diga Tapasi went to the householder Upali's house. The doorkeeper saw him coming in the distance and told him, Wait, Venerable Sir, do not enter. From today on, the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. He has closed his door to the Nigantas and the Nigantis, and he has opened it to the Blessed One's monks, nuns, men lay followers and women lay followers. Venerable Sir, if you need alms, wait here. They will bring it to you here. And he said, I do not need alms, friend. And he turned back and went to the Niganta Nataputta and told him, Venerable Sir, it is only too true that the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. Venerable Sir, I did not get your consent when I told you. Venerable Sir, I do not think that the householder Upali should try to refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine. For the recluse Gotama is a magician and knows a converting magic by which he converts disciples of other sectarians. And now, Venerable Sir, your householder Upali has been converted by the recluse Gotama with his converting magic. Again, Niganta Nataputta said, it is impossible, Tapasi, cannot happen that the householder Upali should go over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. But it is possible, it can happen that the recluse Gotama might come over to discipleship under the householder Upali. A second time and a third time, the Niganta Digatapasi told the Niganta Nataputta, Venerable Sir, it is only too true that the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama, etc. And again, this Niganta Nataputta said, it is impossible, Tapasi, cannot happen, etc., etc. Then the Niganta Nataputta went with a large assembly of Nigantas to the householder Upali's house. The doorkeeper saw him coming in the distance and told him, wait, Venerable Sir, do not enter. From today on, the householder Upali has gone over to discipleship under the recluse Gotama. He has closed his door to the Nigantas and Nigantis, and he has opened his door to the Blessed One's monks, nuns, men lay followers and women lay followers. Venerable Sir, if you need alms, wait here. They will bring it to you here. And this Niganta Nataputta said, good doorkeeper, go to the householder Upali and tell him, Venerable Sir, the Niganta Nataputta is standing at the outer gate with a large assembly of Nigantas. He wishes to see you. Yes, Venerable Sir, he replied. And he went to the householder Upali and told him, Venerable Sir, the Niganta Nataputta is standing at the outer gate with a large assembly of Nigantas. He wishes to see you. And Upali said, in that case, good doorkeeper, make seats ready in the hall of the central door. Yes, Venerable Sir, he replied. And after he had made seats ready in the hall of the central door, he returned to the householder Upali and told him, Venerable Sir, the seats are made ready in the hall of the central door. Now it is time to do as you think fit. Then the householder Upali went to the hall of the central door and sat down on the highest, best, chief, most excellent seat there. Then he told the doorkeeper, now, good doorkeeper, go to the Niganta Nataputta and tell him, Venerable Sir, the householder Upali says, enter, Venerable Sir, if you wish. Yes, Venerable Sir, he replied. And he went to the Niganta Nataputta and told him, Venerable Sir, the householder Upali says, enter, Venerable Sir, if you wish. Then the Niganta Nataputta went with a large assembly of Nigantas to the hall of the central door. Previously, when the householder Upali saw the Niganta Nataputta coming in the distance, he used to go out to meet him, dust off the highest, chief, best, most excellent seat there with an upper robe, and having arranged it all around, have him seated on it. But now, while seated himself on the highest, best, chief, most excellent seat, he told the Niganta Nataputta, Venerable Sir, there are seats, sit down if you wish. When this was said, the Niganta Nataputta said, householder, you are mad, you are an imbecile. You went saying, Venerable Sir, I shall refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine. And you have come back all caught up in a vast net of doctrine. Just as if a man went to castrate someone and came back castrated on both sides. Just as if a man went out to put someone's eyes and came back with both his eyes put out. So you too, householder, went saying, Venerable Sir, I shall refute the recluse Gotama's doctrine, and you have come back all caught up in a vast net of doctrine. Householder, you have been converted by the recluse Gotama with his converting magic. Let's stop here for a moment so you can see this Niganta Nataputta, he was very angry, very mad with his former disciple, calling him imbecile, calling him mad and all that. And Upali replied, auspicious is that converting magic, Venerable Sir. Good is that converting magic. Venerable Sir, if my beloved kinsmen and relatives were to be converted by this conversion, it would lead to the welfare and happiness of my beloved kinsmen and relatives for a long time. If all nobles were to be converted by this conversion, it would lead to the welfare and happiness of the nobles for a long time. If all Brahmins, all merchants, all workers were to be converted by this conversion, it would lead to the welfare and happiness of them for a long time. If the world with its gods, Maras and Brahmas, this generation with its recluses and Brahmins, its princes and its people, were to be converted by this conversion, it would lead to the welfare and happiness of the world for a long time. As to this, Venerable Sir, I shall give you a simile, for some wise men here understand the meaning of a statement by a simile. Venerable Sir, there was once a Brahmin who was old, aged, and burdened with years, and he had as a wife a young Brahmin girl who was pregnant and near her confinement. Then she told him, "Go, Brahmin, buy a young monkey in the market and bring it back to me as a playmate for my child." He replied, "Wait, madam, till you have born the child. If you bear a boy, then I will go to the market and buy a young male monkey and bring it back to you as a playmate for your little boy. But if you bear a girl, then I will go to the market and buy a young female monkey and bring it back to you as a playmate for your little girl." For the second time, she made the same request and received the same answer. For the third time, she made the same request. Then, since his mind was bound to her with love, he went to the market, bought a young male monkey, brought it back and told her, "I have bought this young male monkey in the market and brought it back to you as a playmate for your child." Then she told him, "Go, Brahmin, take this young male monkey to Ratapani, the dyer's son, and tell him, 'Good Ratapani, I want this young male monkey dyed the color called yellow anguan, pounded and repounded and smoothened out on both sides.'" Then, since his mind was bound to her with love, he took the young male monkey to Ratapani, the dyer's son, and told him, "Good Ratapani, I want this young male monkey dyed the color called yellow anguan, pounded and repounded and smoothened out on both sides." Ratapani, the dyer's son, told him, "Venerable Sir, this young male monkey will take a dyeing, but not a pounding or a smoothening out. So too, Venerable Sir, the doctrine of the foolish Nigantas will give delight to fools, but not to the wise, and it will not withstand testing or being smoothened out." So here he's giving this simile that just as that monkey cannot stand being pounded, repounded, and smoothened out. Similarly, the Niganta's teaching will not stand testing or being smoothened out. Then, Venerable Sir, on another occasion, that Brahmin took a pair of new garments to Ratapani, the dyer's son, and told him, "Good Ratapani, I want this pair of new garments dyed the color called yellow anguan, pounded and repounded and smoothened out on both sides." Ratapani, the dyer's son, told him, "Venerable Sir, this pair of new garments will take a dyeing and a pounding and a smoothening out. So too, Venerable Sir, the doctrine of the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha, will give delight to the wise but not to fools, and it will withstand testing and being smoothened out." Householder, the assembly and the king know you thus. The householder Upali is a disciple of the Niganta Nataputta. Whose disciple should we consider you to be? When this was said, the householder Upali rose from his seat, and arranging his upper robe on one shoulder, he extended his hands in reverential salutation in the direction of the Blessed One and told the Niganta Nataputta, "In that case, Venerable Sir, hear whose disciple I am. He is the wise one who has cast off delusion, abandoned the heart's wilderness, victor in battle. He knows no anguish, is perfectly even-minded, mature in virtue, of excellent wisdom, beyond all temptations. He is without stain. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. Free from perplexity, he abides contented, spurning worldly gains, a vessel of gladness, a human being who has done the recluse's duty, a man who bears his final body. He is utterly peerless and utterly spotless. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. He is free from doubt and skillful, the discipliner and excellent leader, None can surpass his resplendent qualities. Without hesitation, he is the illuminator. Having severed conceit, he is the hero. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. The leader of the herd, he cannot be measured. His depths are unfathomed. He attained to the silence. Provider of safety, possessor of knowledge, he stands in the Dhamma, inwardly restrained. Having overcome all bondage, he is liberated. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. The immaculate tasker, living in remoteness, with fetters all shattered, fully freed, skilled in discussion, imbued with wisdom, his banner lowered, he no longer lusts. Having tamed himself, he no more proliferates. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. The best of seers, with no deceptive schemes, gain the triple knowledge, attain to holiness. His heart cleansed, a master of discourse, he lives ever tranquil, the finder of knowledge. The giver, the first of all givers, he is ever capable. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. He is the Noble One, developed in mind, who has gained the goal and expounds the truth, endowed with mindfulness and penetrative insight. He leans neither forwards nor back, free from perturbation, attained to mastery. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. He has fared rightly and abides in meditation, inwardly undefiled, in purity perfect. He is independent and altogether fearless, living secluded, attained to the summit. Having crossed over himself, he leads us across. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. Of supreme serenity with extensive wisdom, a man of great wisdom, devoid of all greed. He is the Tathagata, he is the Sublime One, the person unrivaled, the one without equal. He is intrepid, proficient in all. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. He has severed craving and become the enlightened one, cleared of all clouds, completely untainted, most worthy of gifts, most mighty of spirits, most perfect of persons, beyond estimation, the greatest in grandeur, attain the peak of glory. The Blessed One is he, and I am his disciple. And Niganta Nataputta asks, when did you concoct that hymn of praise to the recluse Gotama householder? And he said, Venerable Sir, suppose there were a great heap of many kinds of flowers, and then a clever garland maker or garland maker's apprentice were to knot them into a multicolored garland. So too, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has many praiseworthy qualities, many hundred praiseworthy qualities. Who, Venerable Sir, would not praise the praiseworthy? Then since the Niganta Nataputta was unable to bear this honor done to the Blessed One, hot blood there and there gushed from his mouth. That's the end of the sutta. So you can see from this sutta, it's quite interesting how they argue. And even after this prominent person has come to become a disciple of the Buddha, the Buddha was not all that eager to publicize that he has come over, not like the other sectarians. Like Pali said, if other sectarians were to win him over to discipleship, they'll parade all over town and broadcast to everybody. Now, we come to the next sutta, 57, Kukuravatika Sutta, the dog duty ascetic. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Kolian country at a town of the Kolians named Halida Vasana. Then Puna, son of the Kolians, an ox duty ascetic, and also Senia, a naked dog duty ascetic, went to the Blessed One. Puna, the ox duty ascetic, paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down at one side, while Senia, the naked dog duty ascetic, exchanged greetings with the Blessed One. And when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he too sat down at one side, curled up like a dog. Puna, the ox duty ascetic, said to the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, this Senia is a naked dog duty ascetic who does what is hard to do. He eats his food when it is thrown to the ground. He has long taken up and practiced that dog duty. What will be his destination? What will be his future course? And the Buddha said, enough Puna, let that be, do not ask that. Stop here for a moment. These one of the two types of ascetics in India. One is a ox duty ascetic. That means he behaves just like an ox. He will eat grass and walk on all fours, and maybe moo like a cow or whatever. And this dog duty ascetic, he behaves just like a dog, walk on all fours, maybe bark. And when people give him food, he tells people to throw it on the ground. He'll eat it from the ground. And he sleeps lying curled up like a dog. So his friend Puna asked the Buddha, Senya is practicing his dog duty asceticism very hard. After he dies, where will he take rebirth? And the Buddha said, don't ask me that. A second time and a third time, Puna, the ox duty ascetic, said to the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, this Senya is a naked dog duty ascetic who does what is hard to do. He eats his food when it is thrown to the ground. He has long taken up and practiced that dog duty. What will be his destination? What will be his future course? And the Buddha said, well, Puna, since I certainly cannot persuade you when I say, enough Puna, let that be, do not ask me that. I shall therefore answer you. Here, Puna, someone develops the dog duty fully and uninterruptedly. He develops the dog habit fully and uninterruptedly. He develops the dog mind fully and uninterruptedly. He develops the dog behavior fully and uninterruptedly. Having done so on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in the company of dogs. But if he has such a view as this, by this virtue or observance or asceticism or holy life, else I shall become a great god or some lesser god. That is wrong view in his case. Now there are two destinations for one with wrong view, I say, hell or the animal realm. So Puna, if his dog duty succeeds, it will lead him to the company of dogs. If it fails, it will lead him to hell. I'll stop here for a moment. So that's why I see the Buddha did not want to reply. It's not very pleasant hearing reply. The Buddha says because he is practicing like a dog, everything he does is like a dog, and he's also thinking like a dog, etc. So because of that, he's likely to be reborn as a dog. But if he has the wrong view, that because of this ascetic practice, he's going up to heaven, and the Buddha says this wrong view has two consequences. Either the animal realm, or if as a result of the wrong view, you do something even worse, some evil karma, then you will go to hell. So if the dog duty succeeds, he will be reborn as a dog. If it fails, he will go to hell or the animal realm. When this was said, Senya, the naked dog duty ascetic, cried out and burst into tears. Then the Blessed One told Puna, son of the Kolians, the ox duty ascetic, Puna, I could not persuade you when I said, enough Puna, let that be, do not ask me that. Then Senya, the naked dog duty ascetic, said, Venerable Sir, I am not crying because the Blessed One has said this about me, but because I have long taken up and practiced this dog duty. Venerable Sir, this Puna, son of the Kolians, is an ox duty ascetic. He has long taken up and practiced that ox duty. What will be his destination? What will be his future course? And the Buddha said, enough, Senya, let that be, do not ask me that. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, when Senya, the dog duty ascetic, heard that he's either going to be reborn as a dog or in the animal or in hell, then he cried out loudly. And then when the Buddha said, Puna, I asked you not to ask me that. And then Senya said, he's crying not because of what the Buddha said about his being reborn there, but because he feels he has been cheated. For so many long years, he has practiced this with the belief that he will go to heaven. It's like some people nowadays with all the wrong views. You think you join a certain religion, you go to heaven, or you have your this mark here, or you chant the Buddha's name, you go to heaven, all this. In the end, when they find out, it's a wrong view, it's too late. So he's crying because he got so angry that he has been cheated for so long. He has been so foolish to believe that he will go to heaven for his practice. So now he's asking the Buddha to say what is the future destination of Punna, the ox-duty ascetic. And the Buddha said, don't ask me that. The second time and the third time, Senya, the naked dog-duty ascetic, asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, this Punna, son of the Koreans, is an ox-duty ascetic. He has long taken up and practiced that ox-duty. What will be his destination? What will be his future course? And the Buddha said, well, Senya, since I certainly cannot persuade you when I say, enough, Senya, let that be. Do not ask me that. I shall therefore answer you. Here, Senya, someone develops the ox duty fully and uninterruptedly. He develops the ox habit fully and uninterruptedly. He develops the ox mind fully and uninterruptedly. He develops ox behavior fully and uninterruptedly. Having done so, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in the company of oxen. But if he has such a view as this, by this virtue or observance or asceticism or holy life, I shall become a great god or some lesser god, that is wrong view in his case. Now there are two destinations for one with wrong view, I say, hell or the animal realm. So Senya, if his dog duty succeeds, it will lead him to the company of oxen. If it fails, it will lead him to hell. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, and similarly, the Buddha says, this guy keeps acting like an ox and behaving like an ox and thinking like an ox, etc. So it's natural that he will be reborn as an ox. But if he has wrong view, then he may even lead him to hell. When this was said, Punna, son of the Koreans, the ox-duty ascetic, cried out and burst into tears. Then the Blessed One told Senya, the naked dog-duty ascetic, Senya, I could not persuade you when I said, enough, Senya, let that be, do not ask me that. Then Punna, the ox-duty ascetic, said, Venerable Sir, I am not crying because the Blessed One has said this about me, but because I have long taken up and practiced this ox-duty. Stop here for a moment. So here he's also saying he's not crying because the Buddha says he'll be reborn in a woeful plane, but because he's so angry that he has been cheated and his long belief that he will, by this practice, be reborn in heaven. So that's why he's so angry that he cried. Venerable Sir, I have confidence in the Blessed One thus. The Blessed One is capable of teaching me the Dhamma in such a way that I can abandon this ox duty, and that this Senya, the naked dog duty ascetic, can abandon that dog duty. Then Punna, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, he replied. The Blessed One said, Punna, there are 4 kinds of action proclaimed by me after realizing them for myself with direct knowledge. What are the 4? There is dark action with dark result. There is bright action with bright result. There is dark and bright action with bright and dark result. There is action that is neither dark nor bright, with neither dark nor bright result. Action that leads to the destruction of action. And what Punna is dark action with dark result? Here, someone generates an afflictive bodily volition, an afflictive verbal volition, an afflictive mental volition. Having generated an afflictive bodily volition, an afflictive verbal volition, and an afflictive mental volition, he reappears in an afflictive world. When he has reappeared in an afflictive world, afflictive contacts touch him. Being touched by afflictive contacts, he feels afflictive feelings, extremely painful, as in the case of beings in hell. Thus, a being's reappearance is due to being. One reappears through the actions one has performed. When one has reappeared, contacts touch one. Thus, I say, beings are the heirs of their actions. This is called dark action with dark result. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is talking about dark action. Dark action means unwholesome bodily volition, unwholesome verbal volition, and unwholesome mental volition. That means the 3 evil karmas. And because of doing the 3 evil karmas, is reborn in a world where he suffers. So the Buddha says being's reappearance is due to being what type of person. If you behave as a certain type of being, then you're reborn as that type of being. So like in the case of the dog duty ascetic, he behaves like a dog, so he's reborn as a dog. The ox duty ascetic, behaving like an ox, will be reborn as an ox. So this is dark action with dark result. And what punna is bright action with bright result. Here someone generates an unafflictive bodily volition, an unafflictive verbal volition, an unafflictive mental volition. Having generated an unafflictive bodily volition, an unafflictive verbal volition, an unafflictive mental volition, he reappears in an unafflictive world. When he has reappeared in an unafflictive world, unafflictive contacts touch him. Being touched by unafflictive contacts, he feels unafflictive feelings, extremely pleasant, as in the case of the gods of refulgent glory. Thus, a being's appearance is due to being. One reappears through the actions one has performed. When one has reappeared, contacts touch one. Thus I say, beings are the heirs of their actions. This is called bright action with bright result. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha is talking about someone who generates wholesome karma, wholesome body, verbal, and mental volition or karmas, and because of that, because of harming anyone, he reappears in a world where he is not harmed at all, and it's a very pleasant world. So this is bright action with bright result. And what punna is dark and bright action with dark and bright result. Here someone generates a bodily volition that is both afflictive and unafflictive, a verbal volition that is both afflictive and unafflictive, a mental volition that is both afflictive and unafflictive. Having generated a bodily volition, a verbal volition, a mental volition that is both afflictive and unafflictive, he reappears in the world that is both afflictive and unafflictive. When he has reappeared in the world that is both afflictive and unafflictive, both afflictive and unafflictive contacts touch him. Being touched by both afflictive and unafflictive contacts, he feels afflictive and unafflictive feelings, mingle pleasure and pain, as in the case of human beings and some gods and some beings in the lower worlds. Thus, a being's reappearance is due to being. One reappears through the actions one has performed. When one has reappeared, contacts touch one. Thus, I say beings are the heirs of their actions. This is called dark and bright action with dark and bright result. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha is talking about beings who do both wholesome and unwholesome deeds. So they are reborn in the world where they experience both pleasure and pain, like human beings. Many of us human beings, we enjoy life, but at the same time, aging, sickness and death will make us suffer. And what punna is action that is neither dark nor bright, with neither dark nor bright result, action that leads to the destruction of action. Therein, the volition in abandoning the kind of action that is dark with dark result, and the volition in abandoning the kind of action that is bright with bright result, and the volition in abandoning the kind of action that is dark and bright with dark and bright result. This is called action that is neither dark nor bright, with neither dark nor bright result, action that leads to the destruction of action. These are the 4 kinds of action proclaimed by me after realizing them for myself with direct knowledge. Stop here for a moment. So this last one refers to one who practices the holy path. One who practices the holy path, you are not interested to do dark actions, unwholesome deeds. You are also not interested to do wholesome deeds like charity or mixed deeds. So this leads to the destruction of action or karma. When this was said, Puna, son of the Kolians, the ox duty ascetic, said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Venerable Sir, magnificent Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, etc. From today, let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. But Senya, the naked dog-duty ascetic, said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Venerable Sir, Magnificent Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear in many ways as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to the Blessed One for refuge, and to the Dhamma and to the Sangha of monks. I would receive the going forth under the Blessed One. I would receive the full ordination. And the Buddha said, Senya, one who formerly belonged to another sect and desires the going forth and the full ordination in this Dhamma Vinaya, lives on probation for 4 months. At the end of 4 months, if the monks are satisfied with him, they give him the going forth and the full ordination to the monk state. But I recognize individual differences in this matter. Stop here for a moment. So, in the end, Punna just took refuge and became a lay follower, whereas Senya, the dog-duty ascetic, decided to become a monk under the Buddha. So the Buddha told him, people who belong to other sects, when they want to ordain as a Buddhist monk, they have to live on probation for 4 months. During these 4 months, the monks will see whether he has given up all the wrong views that he had before. If he has given up all the wrong views, then only they give him the higher ordination. Otherwise, they won't give him the higher ordination. And he said, Venerable Sir, if those who formerly belong to another sect and desire the going forth and the full ordination in this Dhamma Vinaya, live on probation for 4 months, and if at the end of 4 months, the monks being satisfied with them, give them the going forth and the full ordination to the monk state, then I will live on probation for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, if the monks are satisfied with me, let them give me the going forth and the full ordination to the monk state. Then Senya, the naked dog-duty ascetic, received the going forth under the Blessed One, and he received the full ordination, and soon, not long after his full ordination, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Senya, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now entered upon and abided in that supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. He directly knew birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. And the Venerable Senya became one of the Arahants. It's the end of the sutta. So here, because the Buddha said you have to go on probation for 4 months, he said he's willing to be on probation for 4 years. So the Buddha saw that he was so sincere to receive the ordination. The Buddha straight away immediately gave him the full ordination without the 4 months probationary period. And then it is stated here, and soon, not long after his full ordination, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Senya, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now entered upon and abided in that supreme goal of the holy life. That means he became an Arahant. But even though here he says soon, not long after his full ordination, it's not that quick, because normally when a person becomes a monk, he has to live with a teacher for 5 years, at least 5 years, during which he learns the Suttas and the Vinaya. Then after 5 years, if he knows enough Sutta and Vinaya, then he's allowed to go and live alone. And when they live alone, they struggle for quite a number of years. Normally, at least 10-20 years. So even though here it says soon, not long after his ordination, it will be 10-20 years. So these two suttas are quite interesting. So we end here. Anything to discuss? Yes, generally the Sangha, because when he is on probation, this person will live with other monks in the monastery. So all of them will observe his behavior. And at the end of 4 months, for example, the monks hold a meeting and will ask, is there anyone who objects to his ordination? So if nobody objects, then they will ask a senior monk to ordain him. So if someone objects, then and it's a reasonable objection, then he is not allowed to ordain. So since all the monks have a chance to have a say in his ordination, so that means he is dependent on all the monks.
A person he lives as an animal, as a dog. How would he go to hell for what reason? He didn't do anything wrong.
The Buddha says, if you have wrong view, you can be reborn in the animal realm or the hell realm. When the Buddha says you have wrong view, that means you don't understand karma vipaka. Because if you understand karma vipaka, then you won't behave like an animal. If you don't understand karma vipaka, then you behave like an animal and you do what animal does. Animals, they don't do good deeds at all.
Animal, but
hell, just now I mentioned, if on top of the wrong view, they do something evil. It is easy to do something evil if you think like a dog, if you think like an animal. It's not so difficult to do something wrong. Okay, shall we end here?